Is your RV toilet leaking water when you push the flush pedal or the bowl not holding water anymore? In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the flush pedal seal and the toilet bowl seal. And this is a Thetford Aqua Magic 2 toilet. Normally, you don't have to replace both of these items at the same time, but in this situation, this toilet has both that are leaking, so you get a bonus of seeing both repairs in one video. Now let's go over the tools, parts, and supplies needed. And don't worry, I'll list all these down in the description, so that way you can follow through and check things off to make sure you have all the stuff you need before you start your repair. So first off, a pair of channel lock pliers, can be small or big, and a short pry bar, some needle nose pliers, a Phillips screwdriver. My multi-bit screwdriver is what I use for this. We'll need a 3/8 ratchet or 3/8 socket and a short ratchet. You can also use a ratchet wrench, but I prefer the ratchet itself, and a little tray or something to hang on to parts and pieces. And then we'll need some disposable rubber gloves, paper towels, some garbage bags, some silicone grease. And now for the parts. For the flush pedal seal, it's a waste valve replacement package. Has all the stuff inside of it. We'll break this down during the video. And then we need the bowl seal. So let me show this here a little bit, because this one is for Aqua Magic 2, as it says in the label. And it is a green color, a little black in the top. This is the seal that goes at the flange at the bottom if you remove the whole toilet. This is the only piece that you need. And there are some spare plastic washers in there for the bolts in the back of the toilet. Don't confuse this with the look-alike, which is for the Aqua Magic 5 toilets. The seal is pretty similar, but make sure you read the part in the package. And I also recommend not getting knockoff stuff. Get it right from Thetford. Now as we're getting into it, you can make this repair with the toilet in place, or you can remove the whole thing. Sometimes you have plenty of room to work around, sometimes you don't. Also, if that seal between the bowl and the base is leaking, it can fill the whole base up with water. During that time frame, your leak would be coming between the bowl and the base, like right down here. So you'll see water dripping out, and it'll be a little bit stinky and smelly. When that base fills up with water in that top section, it gets to be pretty messy. Sometimes you can clean that in place in the bathroom, but if it's that gross inside there, I'll remove the whole base and then take it outside, make the repair, bring the toilet in as one piece, and put it back in place. I don't think that's the case in this situation, but we will find out. If you do remove the toilet, you're going to want to replace the seal that goes in the water supply line on the back. That's where the water line comes in right here, and this is what the seal looks like. It's just a little rubber seal. You can use a small screwdriver or pick to pull the old one out. This will go in place. It's called a cone seal. So this is linked in the description as well for what you need for that. Also, to make sure you have the right toilet that you're working on, you can find a model number on the back as well. But there'll be a sticker on the back. It'll say Thetford and a 5-digit number. Then you can Google that, figure out what model toilet you have to make sure you get the right parts for your repair. So now let's get into the repairs. I'm going to do this in 2 sections. The first repair, we'll do the flush pedal seal replacement, or the valve replacement I should call it. And before we start doing that, we need to turn the water off outside of the RV. When I turn the water off, I'll open the low point drains, push the pedals down to relieve all the pressure out of it. That way when I pull the valve out of the toilet, I don't have water squirting out and making a big mess. You will get some drippage coming out of it. You can use a little drip tray or paper towels when it gets to that point. Okay, let's go outside. Okay, water's off, pressure is relieved. Now we're going to remove the pedal. These you can pull off. I use a pry bar because it's less violent pulling them off, so let me show you how to do that. When you take the pry bar right here where this ball's at, that's its pivot point in the center. And there's a little, you'll see when it comes off, a little spring that holds it on right about here. So if we use this, pry against the toilet, well, went out further than I thought it would. It's one of the disadvantages of doing videos making repairs because you can't get the best angle. So this is the first time I had one of these springs pop off, popping the pedal off because I was at a bad angle. But this little stem here goes down into this groove. So this will sit just like this, and that's where it would go. And on the back side of the pedal, let me show you a couple spots. This little groove back here, that's where your the valve goes to. So this little knob goes into here. And this stem goes into the center. This bigger hole, this is for the ball seal in the center. So I try not to move these, that way the lines back up better. But pay attention to where this is at. So when you put the valve back in, you put this in the right position so everything lines up well. And then you can kind of see it right here in the top, the little rusty spot. It even says spring on there now with a light, I can see it. So that's where the spring goes into. So you need to make sure the spring sets into there. And I actually think I need to wind this around one time. Okay, I gotta put this in. Erica, switch me so I can get a better angle. Okay, so the bottom is down in the groove. And then this guy has to wind around. You can see this will sit right into this top groove up here. Probably have to use a pair of pliers or something to make it work. Okay, spring is not going very easy. I'm going to throw some safety glasses on just in case something goes wrong here. So what we have is the bottom stem of the spring. You can see that goes into this little vertical groove here. So we'll pop that into place. Then we need to wind this around and make this hook into the groove in the top so this is in the right position. And it has a lot of tension on it. So, like I said, it's the first time I had one of these pop out before, so I'm learning on the fly. My plan is to hold this in, use some pliers, maybe I'll get a screwdriver on it so I can pop it in and get it around the side. Here we go. Got the pliers on the straight stem, pushed it with my pry bar, and was locked in place. As you can see, now our flush ball seal lever goes in this hole, spring goes in this hole, and back here for the valve, everything is lined up to where it's supposed to be. So now, once I replace the seal, Erica, you can switch me back. All right, I'm going to take some paper towel and set it below the valve. You can use a little Tupperware drip tray or whatever works best for you. Not a lot of water will come out of this because water pressure is already off, but there's some water behind this little valve cartridge. So how this works, this outer ring will rotate backwards. You'll pull it towards you a little bit and then turn it upward. And just like that, everything is relieved. Now it'll pop out. Let me show you how this will go, or show you how it comes out so you know how it goes back in. So there's a rubber O-ring on it. This will sit against this portion of it. And this little stem, it kind of locks in like that. When you put the new one in, you have to rock it, bring it in from the back side, and go like that. So then when this outer ring pushes against it, it's pushing the valve tight into the toilet. If you put this the wrong way, like this, nothing is there to hold the valve from popping out. You don't have a water leak issue. So make sure you put it in like that when you put the new one in place. Now the other thing that's going to be really hard to see, on the side of here is where the little seal and spring is. Sorry, inside this hole. That little black thing back there is a seal. I will use my needle nose pliers to pop that out. The spring will come out behind it. Okay, there's a seal. Not much to it. And the spring fell down here. You can see the spring is tapered. One end is bigger than the other. It only goes into this one way. The small end goes into the seal. Similar to that. What I like to do when I take all the parts out, I'll put them in just how they came out. That way if I get distracted, I can always refer back to what's laying on the ground and make sure I put things back the proper way. So we'll leave that there for reference if we need it, putting things back together. Now I'll take some paper towels and we'll clean out inside of that valve area. If you get some calcium buildup or dirty water, that can affect the new seal. So make sure everything is clean before you put it in. Alright, everything is ready to go. Let's get our new parts out of the package. So in here you'll have instructions. This is a new flange gasket seal if you remove the whole toilet, which we don't need right now. And we'll have the new valve, outer ring, O-ring for the valve, a new spring and seal. Move the garbage out of the way here. Now I'm going to use silicone grease to lubricate the seal and the O-ring. You do not want to use petroleum grease. Petroleum grease will make the rubber seals swell up, and when the seals swell up over time, it'll make it really sticky and things won't move very well. Once everything is coated, we'll put our parts together for assembly. Slide an O-ring over the back side of the valve. Now as we took the old valve out, we'll kind of hold it in the position that it needs to be. We'll take the valve, put it in from the back, rotate it in place. Now everything is in the right spot. You can see the O-ring is pushed all the way towards the outside. That O-ring keeps water inside the whole cavity here from leaking. And what the seal does, the seal keeps the water in the right spot, and when you push the pedal it flushes. It will move this little groove right here to make water flow. So for instance, the seal is sitting here when you're not flushing, and the seal moves to this area when you are flushing. Now we'll put the spring in the back side of the seal. The taper end of it, the small end, goes into the seal. This is where the screwdriver comes in. You can put the end of the seal on your screwdriver. You can push it into the hole. Sometimes you have to use something else to hold this because it sticks onto your screwdriver. And once it's in place, you should be able to take your finger and push on it against that spring, and everything should feel like it's working properly in there. That's why the grease on it is very important, to make sure things are lubricated and they work the way they're supposed to. Now that the inner spring and seal is in place, grab your valve, kind of hold both pieces at once. You want this to be in this little loose area so it's not binding up on anything. Let me show you this here. See where these grooves are? Right here. There's a little tab. That lines up on the back side of this valve. So you'll have the tabs on the valve go where the open space is here. Okay, so everything's snapped down into where it's flush. Now we will take the outer ring. You need to push inward so those grooves get on the back side of the tabs in the toilet. Bottom one's not quite in. Erica, I'm going to have to switch your spots again. This is all about the angle. So I'm going to come over there. There you go, that feels right. Should have a little bit of a wiggle to this piece. Now the valve moves nice and easy inside of there. And that should be right about there to line up, like the old one came out. Now we're ready to pop the pedal back in place. So what you'll do when you put this on is you'll have to make sure you line up this tab into this little hole, this slot here, and then the spring goes into the top, and then your flush ball is here. We did not move this at all. This will go back in this place pretty easy, and this we already put back into the right spot. This one's going to be make sure it's in the right groove. So when you put it on there, you can start it a little bit. You got to peek in the backside to make sure things are lining up the right way. There you go. I would say about the 4 to 5 o'clock range where this lever is at. Once you have everything lined up, you gotta give it a little smack in the middle so it snaps over that spring. Being able to look underneath of here, I can see that it's in the groove. It's really hard to show on camera, but if you know the slot that you were trying to put it into and verify that little pin off the flush valve is in there, and you're good to go. So now when we push it, everything should operate smooth. If you hear like snaps or big clicks, something is catching, something is not in the right position. I have seen that before where that flush valve was put into the wrong position, and luckily when the pedal was sitting still it was good, but when the customer flushed it the first time and let go of the pedal, it started filling the bowl up all by itself. So now we'll turn the water on and verify there's no leaks back here by the flush valve, and everything fills up properly, doesn't fill by itself, and this repair will be done at that point. Then we'll move to the next one. Okay, I close the low point drains, turn the water on. I'll also point out this is the time where you don't want to get distracted. Make sure you turn the water on, come right back inside. Just in case something is wrong, you're not going to create a flood by talking to the neighbor. So, let's see what we got. There we go. Nice and smooth operation. I don't see any drips in here. I'll monitor it by leaving a paper towel back here for a little bit. Leave a dry one there, of course, to make sure there's no drips or leaks coming off of it. And we can leave the water on to do the bowl seal replacement, because the only time water would come out would be when we push this pedal. Now, if this was the only repair that I was making, I would clean up on the toilet where my dirt and grease marks are here, stuff on the ground, verify there's no leaks, and we'd be all set. I cleaned up from the flush pedal valve replacement. Now let's get into the flush ball seal replacement. And let me go over the seal itself and explain how it works. So in the kit, you do get some instructions. This is a flange gasket seal for the bottom if you're removing the whole toilet. And they give you a couple of washers. You use plastic washers on these, on the screws in the back, because you don't want to use a metal washer on a porcelain toilet. That can cause it to crack when you tighten it. So make sure you use these if you don't have plastic washers in place already. I'll put these in my little flexible tray here. These things are awesome. They go in my backpack and they just pop up and they're ready to work. Now the seal itself. This has a cone shape to it, as you can see. The bottom is flat. So how this goes in the toilet goes just like this. And the bowl sits on top of this. So the bowl will sit on top and you press down on this part. If it starts leaking between this part of the seal and the bowl, that's when it fills the base up with the smelly water. If it's just plain old losing water, which is going down past this part where your ball sits, water is just leaking down past here, down into the toilet, or the black tank, through the toilet. You can see in the bottom it's flat. When you put this in place, it'll sit in just like that, flat. You center it up and put it in. And again, just like on the valve replacement, we'll use silicone grease to lubricate everything. That always helps it sit a little bit and seal a little bit better. And don't use petroleum grease because it makes the seal swell up and things will work really sticky when you're pushing the pedal. So to get started, the first thing is on the back side, we'll use our channel lock pliers. We need to remove the hose going up to the vacuum breaker. So we'll squeeze the hose, and there will be some water inside of this hose itself. So we'll use some paper towels down here to catch it when I'm ready for that. To make it easy, I'm going to remove the hose on the bottom side here at the flush valve. So these are a spring clamp. You can squeeze them, slide them up the hose, and leave them there. Now you'll just take the hose itself, wiggle it, and it'll come right off of the little hose barb in there. Sometimes it sticks. You have to use a little pry bar, screwdriver, or pliers to pull on it a little bit. Remember, don't hit the flush pedal because water will squirt out of here and you'll have a bigger mess. Now there's going to be 2 bolts in through the little gap back here where you can really reach your fingers. This is the 3/8 bolts. There's one right here, the other one the other side of the hose over here. So those are what we're trying to reach with our 1/4" ratchet and 3/8 socket. So there's bolt number 1. They are pretty long. You can see from factory they put a metal washer on it and a plastic nylon washer below it. So that is good to go to put back in just the way it is. Just put that into our screw tray here. Now we'll reach the other bolt. Okay, both our bolts are loose. We need to clear a work area. How this works, there's 4 tabs on the top of that base below the bowl. We'll rotate the toilet, not even a 1/4 turn, then it'll be free, it'll lift right up. I'll take a plastic bag, set it over here. When I lift the bowl up, I'll set it here. That way it keeps the floor clean, not putting a toilet onto the floor. Doesn't take a lot of force at all. Just give a little bit of a turn. That's it. Lift it up. Now you're looking at the base of a toilet. If you were to replace the whole base area, which you can get this piece if need be, you would get this whole section. And you can put this onto the existing bowl of the toilet. It'll have the new flush valve inside of here. It'll have a new ball seal down here. And you'll just reconnect it, put it onto the floor, and that will be all you would use. They do cost a little bit more for the whole base itself. So parts wise, we have about half the money into it between the valve we replaced over here and the ball seal. And labor wise, you're just about the same. You have a little bit more time replacing this, but you still have labor into doing all of the removal and put it back together. Okay, Erica, bring the camera in here. I'm going to show you something. This is a fun way to work with, working on toilets. See this little yellow right there? So that is pee down in there. But what I'm looking for, if this whole area right in here was filled up, that means it was leaking past this seal into there. And you can see where this is. This is probably coming over the front of the bowl of the toilet and then just creeping down in because there's not that much in there and it's only this little section right here. So when this seal fails below the bowl, this whole area will be filled up with a brown, hopefully clear, but mostly brown liquid. And you'll see it dripping down to the floor because if it goes over top of these little hollow points that hold the bowl down, this goes straight down to the floor. So water would be coming out like down here at the rim of the toilet or right at the floor level. You'll see it creeping out from here down to the toilet as well, or down towards the floor, I should say. We'll use a paper towel, clean up what we can inside of there, and we take this seal here. We'll clean up this area, clean up the ball itself, and put it back in. So what I'll do when I'm cleaning is I'll use some of the silicone grease. I'll put it onto the ball in a paper towel. I'll use that for cleaning. I don't want to use something like an alcohol or a cleaner because that can penetrate into the plastic itself. But I use the silicone grease. It does a really good job at removing all a little bit of debris. Plus it gives a little bit of base lubrication before we put everything back together. But I will lubricate that seal itself. That way there's a fresh lubrication and everything because I'm wiping part of this off. Okay, everything is clean. Now we'll take our new seal. I'll just put some silicone grease on a couple sections of it. Then work it around with my hands and my gloves. So this one, what I determined was it was not holding water in the bowl, and where the water was leaking was below this flat point to the ball itself. So water was coming down through here and going down into the black tank. It was not leaking over top of this because I would have seen a lot more water around in this area. So this is just a common, this area stops sealing against the ball itself. Just over time, things wear out and it happens. Now when we put this back in, this will basically center itself on top of the ball. When we put the bowl back in place, we'll look down in the bowl itself to make sure the seal is centered, because you'll see this part of it in there. And we don't want to have it all the way one way, an offset, but it's almost impossible to get it dead center in the middle because you put this on, it has a little bit of slop. Then you have to line up where the bolt holes go in the back, and you put your screws back in. So as long as it's pretty close to center, where you can see rubber in all points of the hole at the bottom of the toilet, we're good. And before we put the bowl back in place, I will lift the bowl up and clean the bottom surface of that to make sure we have a nice clean surface sitting on top of the new seal. Now as we're down here, you can see these 4 big holes line up with those 4 tabs that twist in place. And these 2 holes to the back are the bolt holes for our bolts that go down to the base. Okay, everything is clean. So I'll lift the toilet seat up so I can see. Now we're sitting down flat. If you look in the bottom, you can see an even amount of black around there. But watch when I turn this, it might offset this a little bit. See how it went to the one way just a little bit? I can't quite see the seal here, but I can see it over here. Let me try to reposition it just a little bit. Center it up. Now I'll make sure my bolts line up in the back. So I'll close the lid. And with the toilet being in place, this is pretty much all by feel. I'll put the bolt in, make sure everything feels like it's lining up. You are going into plastic with these bolts, so make sure they start, but you will need to use the ratchet to crank them down. They're not going to spin them easily by your fingers. Okay, I was able to feel where the old holes were, and I dropped the screw into the threaded area that was there before. I started it by finger threading it in just a little bit. Everything is lined up perfectly on the bolts in the back. I didn't have to manipulate anything on the bowl side, but I'll pick this up. Make sure everything looks like it's nice and centered. It looks better than it does from the factory. So, let me crank them in. Okay, both bolts are tight. There's not a torque spec on them, so just tighten them down to where you're not going to strip out the plastic or crack the bowl, just where they stop turning and they're snug and they're tight. Now let's put that hose back on that fills the bowl itself and put the clamp in place. This hose will just snap on. We'll grab our spring clamp with our pliers, slide it in place. Everything feels tight. Now our water is on, so I can push the pedal, check for leaks. Now a little bit of water is going to stay in there. If you want to do the true test, just leave it sit for 10-15 minutes to make sure water stays. In this situation, water is only staying in the bowl for maybe 30 seconds. So I'm already further ahead than what it was before I started. But they should hold water forever basically in it until the water evaporates. So leave it sit for a little bit, make sure that a little bit of water stays in there, and you are good to go. Now we'll clean a few things up around here, and we are all set with the repair. So that's how you replace the Thetford Aqua Magic 2, the flush valve, and the ball seal at the bottom of the toilet that was not holding water. Now let's answer some frequently asked questions. So the first question is, why do these seals leak? So let's start with the bowl seal on the bottom. You have a lot of stuff going through the toilet, and over time, usually what I see is RVs that are on harder water, where you'll see calcium buildup at the sinks and the showers and that. You'll get more issues with your valves and seals than those RVs compared to ones that have softer water. When that calcium buildup builds up on the bottom of the bowl, the ball, and the seal, it just gets in the way of everything making a nice tight seal. And replacing the seal, starting over from scratch, will make things seal just like new again inside there. Now I have had sometimes when I come to changing one of these seals, I'm talking about a ball seal here, that there's so much sediment on the toilet itself that you have to chisel and scrape it off, and it's a mess. At that point, you're actually better to replace the whole toilet, because trying to mess with that thick caked on calcium is a losing battle. This toilet was pretty clean all the way through, just was worn out. I know this RV is about 4 to 5 years old, and it's been used full time with RVers, so they got its life out of that seal. Now let's talk about the flush valve seal. That's the same way. There's rubber, there's O-rings, moving parts. Over time, seals can shrink, seals get worn out, and eventually things will just drip. Maybe not every time you flush. Sometimes they get to the point where they drip when you're not even using the toilet. This one was only dripping when the flush pedal was being pushed out. And the next question is, how often do these seals need to be replaced? Well, I would say as a maintenance program, I would use silicone grease on that ball seal probably twice a year. Clean it off and put silicone grease in there. That'll keep things lubricated, keep any gunk from building up down there, and they'll last a lot longer. I've had some people on really hard water, the seals on the bowl only last 6 months. I've seen some people, the seals last 5 or 6 years. Really, you replace them when they stop working the way they're supposed to. If you notice that the water's not holding in the bowl or it's leaking onto the ground, investigate and fix the issue. I think I lost circulation in my legs sitting here. Another frequently asked question is, can you change these seals on all toilets? Well, it depends on the model and the make of the toilet. Thetford Aqua Magic 2 or Style Plus, you can change both of these parts just like this one, because they are the same part for both toilets. The Aqua Magic 5, you can replace the ball seal in it. The flush valve is a different mechanism, but it is replaceable. Now when you get to Dometic toilets, the 300 series, like 300, 310, 320, those toilets do not split apart. So don't try to take a toilet apart because you will ruin it. You can change the flush ball seal, but that one is changed from the top of the toilet. It just pulls out and you put the new one in place after you clean it. So that's a really easy repair on that one. You're not removing the whole bowl on the top. And on Dometic, you have a different type of a valve mechanism that's not quite as involved as the Thetford that goes in the side of it. That's a little valve, kind of looks like an A type thing where one hose goes up to the top to fill the toilet, water comes in the other way, and it has a push button that the pedal pushes to let water flow through. Now, if you have a lot more questions on RV repair and maintenance, You'll definitely want to check out our RV education page on our website. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video.